was an extraordinary woman. She had an experience at the school where the principal, because she wouldn't eat rotten food that had been contaminated by a cat, she was dragged into the principal's office and he told her that she was nothing but an Indian slut and she would never be anything but an Indian slut. She was 11. And I believe that my mother's profound resolve grew out of experiencing those things. In the 1940s, post-Second World War, it was Indigenous people were not allowed to get any education beyond grade 9. My mother's response was to engage in a letter campaign endlessly to find support, and she ended up going to Toronto, training as a nanny, and from there she got a scholarship to train as a nurse and a midwife in New Zealand because you couldn't do it in Canada. And my mother was an incredible inspiration to me. I didn't write them in the way that she experienced them, but one of the characters, her little friend hemorrhages to death from tuberculosis on the playground. My mother watched a child hemorrhage to death, her friend hemorrhage to death from tuberculosis on the playground. There's a scene in the book where the motel manager, where the girls are able to get chambermaid work, says to them that that you Indian chicks are only good for two things, and both of them happen in motel rooms. That was an extrapolation of what that principal said to my mother. This is something that has captured my consciousness for all of my life. And I first started writing about this in poetry and short prose in the 80s and early 90s. And so this is something that I have been focused on for a long time. So over the course of my life, I have heard this consistent refrain of why can't they just get over it? It's history. It happened a long time ago. And so I wanted to create something that might touch people. And I particularly chose fiction because I think it's a bit of a safe place, but it can also be very powerful. And I wanted to demonstrate what the impacts were. There's a lot of work, tremendous amount of incredible work that's been done. For example, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, their report, a tremendous amount of work that's been done in the academy with respect to what happened at the schools and the background of how they came into being. But there isn't so much out there about what the impacts were and how those young people had to carry those impacts alone without any kind of supports once they left the schools. Not only that, but how that impacted their families, their extended families, their communities. A lot of people have said that the purpose of the residential school was to assimilate Indigenous people into non-Indigenous society. I kind of disagree. I think it was to terminate and basically to annihilate a people. If the intent had been a good faith effort to assimilate Indigenous people into mainstream Canadian society, where was the effort once they left the schools? Where was the support to mainstream them into society? It wasn't there because that wasn't the intent.